Hi, everyone. This is Sarah Russell, and this is part of my video series on topics of interest to nutritional therapy practitioners and other holistic health practitioners looking to really up-level the client-centered and service-oriented aspect of their holistic practice. Today, I want to talk about a very common topic I get asked about during my mentoring sessions with my clients, which is how to run a productive client consultation. We're going to cover a few aspects of this. And I just kind of want to give you a summary of what we're going to cover. The first item is really prepare ahead of time. And the second is that the client needs to do their part. You obviously cannot prepare if the client has not provided you with the information that you need. So you need to have in place a structure for collecting information from your client, and your client needs to know what your expectations are and what their responsibilities are in order for you to do a good job preparing for the session. In other words, the roles and responsibilities of each of you are clear to both of you, and you're agreed on that. You need to know what supplements your client is taking. I ask every time I talk to a client to update me on their supplements, because things change and sometimes clients just put themselves on stuff or forget to take things that they were taking that maybe you assumed that they were taking because you recommended them and they started taking them. So it's always really good to be updated on that. And then you will definitely want to discuss the progress and changes with your client since the last session so that you know what evolution has occurred. And you also want to make sure that you cover short-term and long-term objectives that the client has. You may have a perspective on their health and you can certainly share that with them, but ultimately you have to focus on what their objectives are as well. And then agree on next steps. So I'm going to go into a little more detail on each of those points. And what does it mean to prepare ahead of time for a session? You don't have to do loads and loads of work, but you should come to a session knowing remembering what trajectory your client has been on. So just kind of refresh your memory a little bit on the client's case. It is really helpful to have a file in your client's folder. So, when you organize your client folders, every client should have a folder with their name. I alphabetize them by last name, and then I put first name. And then inside that folder, you should have a 1 to 2 page client summary where you write down the client's basic information, how old they are, what their weight is, and always make sure that you put a date in parentheses so that as you continue working with a person, you update the information, or you keep in mind, okay, that was 3 years ago, so they're 3 years older than they were at the time when we started. So same thing, with weight, you'll want to update that if anything majorly changes. For example, if you're working with a pregnant client or a postpartum client, there are going to be weight shifts as the months go by. That is just part of the process of working with someone during the family building years. Okay, in that client note file, you also want to have basic information about their main presenting issues, and you can update those, and you can make notes in terms of, like, essentially you'll start with the initial set of presenting issues, and then you can put in parentheses, as things improve or resolve, and you can update over time so that you have a sense of the evolution of the client's case. You also want to include highlights of the person's family history, highlights of the person's eating history. You always want to note if the person has a history of disordered eating. It is essential for you to remember that we don't, especially as our practices grow, we don't always remember all the details for clients. It's amazing what you will forget that you think that you'll always remember. So it's a really good idea just to put all the notes in one place under basic headings. It takes a tiny bit of time at the beginning of your work with each new client. I recommend that you don't take on too many new clients at once. So I try not to onboard more than 2 new people per week. Ideally, even, one is better. But, do what you can because your new clients need you. So, but don't go overboard. Truly try not to go over more than 2 clients per week if you're starting out, because you need time to get your materials organized and your flow going. Okay. So that's part of preparing ahead of time. And the other part is that you have sent your client the forms that they need to fill out for whatever type of session that they're coming to you for. So if it's an intake session, you have intake forms. You don't have to send all of the forms that you want for the client to fill out in the process of your work together before the initial appointment. For some clients, and even for some practitioners, that can be overwhelming. So if you have an intake form that collects health history and basic details, and you have a nutritional assessment questionnaire, and you have a food journal, and you have accessory forms, you may or may not want to pace yourself and distribute 1 or 2 forms at a time. You always want to start, of course, with a health history questionnaire or intake form and any important accessory information that you absolutely need to have ahead of time. Typically, you'll also want to have a food journal so that you have an idea of what the client is currently eating. I sometimes just ask clients, I tell clients they can fill out a food journal if they want to, but I also just give them a space where they can just write down what they ate in the past 24 hours if they did not fill out their food journal. So that is the option that I give them. And I tell my clients, look, I need 48 to 72 hours before our session in order to prepare. You can tell them that you need more time if that's what you need. Just make your expectations clear. And that really helps. The more clear you and your client are on what your respective roles and responsibilities are, the less you will be disappointed, and the more clear the communication will be. And you know what? Sometimes life happens. Your client will not be able to fill out the forms on time. You can reschedule. It's totally fine. Okay. It is important for your client to inform you of all the medications, supplements, recreational drugs, etc., that they are currently taking. And I also ask my clients to tell me what they have recently discontinued and to let me know of anything that they have been thinking about starting. It's important, sometimes people get curious about something or other, and I want to know what their thought process is, so we can talk about it. You always want to make sure that you discuss on the session and during the session, the items that you have collected from them. And also that you ask them if you haven't, you may or may not have a system to collect this information on the forms that you use, but you can ask them during the session what changes have occurred between the last time that you spoke and now. There's always something new going on in people's lives because we are dynamic. Just let them talk and listen, take notes. You don't have to write down everything, but just the most important pieces of information you will definitely want to annotate so that you can have that to look back to later. And then you want to make sure that you talk about both the short-term and the long-term goals that the client has. You can share if you have a clear sense of what your ideas or, like if these are kind of my practitioner or, like clinicians, like bird's eye view of how I envision what I would like for you. What do you think about this? how does this match up to your sense of what you need? What are your priorities? And what do what would you like to focus on most in the short term? If you could change 1 to 2 things in the next 4 weeks, what would those be? You don't have to ask exactly those questions. You might have a different set of questions or a different way that you ask, but you want to have a sense of what your kind of vision is and what their vision is. And you kind of want to put your heads together and decide kind of what the most sensible and intelligent and actionable trajectory is for the client in terms of what changes they're going to implement. So you want to have a clear sense and a consensual agreement on what their next steps are going to be. And that is going to really help your client implement the changes smoothly, and it will help build trust between both of you. So that's it. I hope that this is helpful to you. I would love to have your feedback and any any comments with any experience that you've had, or any other things that you do that you think could be added to this list of tips for practitioner success. So thank you so much, and take care. Bye.